Move on to item E, ECCL update, various ongoing project activity status report.
Yes, President Dyson, members of the board, the purpose of this item, which we bring to you, I think, every board meeting, is to update the board on the latest activities related to the ECCL project. And John Baker with Swinnerton is here again this evening to provide the board with a update.
Apologies, the laptop was turned off and it needs a user password entry.
Do switch user. Switch user. Then you can go into.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Can everyone see this?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you for asking me to do a report tonight on both the current status of the the soil mitigation work, and also the progress towards awarding the contract, the lease-leaseback agreement to Turner Construction. First, I want to give an update on the soil mitigation work. This is the remedial action work plan, as what's known as the RAW scope. If you've driven by San Pablo Avenue, you'll see there has been activity out there, although most of it is fenced off and not easy to see from the street. We are about 2/3 complete with that work. I'm going to give an update tonight on the completion of that work and also the completion of the demolition work, which remains. Right now, the week of June 9th, there are 4 areas of soil remediation. The first is what we call the AOC 6 area. This is the area where there had been testing that showed there may be methane in those areas, and also the planter area, field, and parking areas. Those are the 4 sort of quadrants of the site which are having remediation work. We are just about complete with the AOC 6 area. Right now our activity is placing soil where soil has been removed. This is the area that we had the most uncertainty about in terms of soil remediation. The testing of the areas showed that about half the area did not have any methane whatsoever, and we were able to reuse that soil on site, which will result in savings to the project. About 1/3 of it was needed to be off-hauled, however, to what's called a Class 2 landfill, which is basically soil that can go on other projects that don't have the stringent requirements that school sites do for hazardous materials. So that soil has been off-hauled. We had a small amount of soil which needed to go to a Class 1 landfill. This is where there is enough hazardous material that needs to go to off-hauled actually out of state. The good news is it was a much smaller area than we thought we had anticipated, and so that work is now complete. So what we're doing this week and next week is replacing the soil which can remain on site, and also placing some import soil that we're obtaining from other sites. So that work will be done at the end of this week. We are sampling and profiling the soil at the planter areas this week, and we'll off-haul any that may be required next week. In the field area, we're going to be sampling and profiling that soil next week, and off-hauling any that needs to be off-hauled the week of the 23rd. And at the parking lot, we're doing excavation this week. We'll sample and profile that soil next week, and off-haul any soil that's needed the week of the 23rd. So by the end of the week of the 23rd, we will be done with all soil work at the site. And at that point, we will be able to complete demolition work of the slabs and foundations for the remainder of the project. If the board recalls, We did initial demolition, had to stop while we do the soil remediation work, then we can now go back and complete demolition. So that demolition work will be completed towards the end of the week of the 21st of July. That will be complete, and that will then, we'll have then completed all of the soil remediation work and also the demolition work on site. And at that point, we'll be able to commence with construction of the project. In terms of the work that's going, the hard work that's underway right now in order to finalize the Turner lease-leaseback agreement and put that contract as well as the joint operating agreement with the city of Emeryville to the board, here's an update on that process as well. If you recall at the board meeting 2 weeks ago, we were not able to award the contract to Turner because we had not received DSA approval. DSA is the Division of State Architect, and that approval we anticipate receiving by the end of this week. The plan you see before you, which has been discussed with both the city and the district, is in order to be as prudent as possible to make sure that we have certainty regarding cost and schedule for the Turner lease-leaseback agreement, and also coordinate this schedule with the completion of the raw work and demolition work. So our plan is as follows. Once we receive the DSA approved drawings, which we anticipate at the end of this week, those drawings will go back out to Turner's subcontractors. What's excellent about this process is they'll be able to go back under the terms of the leaseback agreement and ask those subcontractors, or actually select subcontractors, to fine-tune the bids which they have submitted. This should result in some savings and also added competition because we're going out to in each case they're going to the lowest two subcontractors, which allows us to get some more add a little more competitive process to the finalization of the subcontractor bids. They have asked for those subcontractor revisions to their numbers to be in within 2 weeks, the end of the week of the 23rd, and then finalize those subcontractor bids the week of the 30th. Next week, and also after we receive the subcontractor bids, we're going to be working with stakeholders from the city and the district to do some scope confirmation. Right now, in the Turner's numbers, there are a number of what we call allowances, and these allowances are for things which are not yet defined. This is primarily due to the DSA drawings which had not yet been approved, so there is allowances anticipating the finalization of that. So the idea is to make those allowances go away and be hard numbers, and also look at a number of other scope things which need confirmation. So we're working with, again, city and district stakeholders the week of the 16th, and then after we receive the final revised bids from the subcontractors, the first full week in July, July 7th. Also, in June, Swinnerton will be working also with Dave Gallagher to negotiate the indirect costs in Turner's lease-leaseback agreement. What that means is there are direct costs, which is sort of hard construction, and also some indirect costs, which is Turner's general requirements, general conditions, and fee. And our goal here is to negotiate those to be as cost-effective as possible, to use the bond dollars wisely and negotiate those down to a reasonable yet cost-efficient amount. And so we're working on those, Turner to do that on the 23rd. Again, this is part of the lease-leaseback type of agreement, which allows the district to negotiate those sorts of numbers. Following all this, in early to mid-July, we'll finalize the contract amount and also confirm the project milestone schedule, with the goal of taking the contract and the JOA back to your board the last week in July, which I believe would be a special meeting, although I'm not certain of that, and then also to council the first week in August for their review. Again, the plan has been to have board review and approval first, followed by council approval. That will allow us then to issue a notice of proceed the first week in August with the construction contract following completion of the raw soil remediation work and their completion of demolition on site. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Any questions, board members? Sounds like a lot of work.
I'm actually fine, but I guess the comment that I have is that I guess, are we moving less dirt than we initially anticipated in the beginning?
We are removing less dirt than we anticipated.
Right.
This is always, the scope of the raw work is estimated based on testing done on site. They do soil sampling that the soils report did.
Mhm.
So the way that this work is done is that there's unit pricing obtained from the contractor in terms of different types of soil and where they need to go. The worst case scenario is that all the soil would have to be removed.
Mhm.
And if you recall, I believe it was 4 weeks ago when we came to the board and approved a change order to Turner scope of work. We discussed sort of what that worst case scenario was. We have, I would say that we anticipated in the
Mhm.
amount of awarding that contract,
Mhm.
what we believe we will probably have based on the soils report.
Mhm.
The amount of the change order awarded was $500,000, which aligns with the budget for
Mhm.
that work.
Mhm.
I would say that we are better than anticipated,
Right.
where we're able to leave more soil on site. In fact, that $500,000 award was based on off-hauling everything
Right.
to as a class two site.
Mhm.
So assume that was kind of the mid-range scenario.
Mhm.
We're finding that much of the soil can remain on site.
Mhm.
And I want to point out that the testing requirements for hazardous soil on site for school sites by the State Department of Toxic Substance Control is very stringent.
Mhm.
That's why we can actually, most of the soil is being off-hauled to a site where it can be used in other construction projects,
Right.
just not on school sites.
Right, right.
So for the area where we thought there might be methane, we were able to keep about half that soil on site.
Mhm.
We've not completed the sample and profiling of the smaller areas like the field, parking, and planters, although that's less an area than the AOC 6 area.
Right.
So it's looking like we can keep, so far so good, keep soil on site, and also the off-hauled soil, only a small amount to date has to go to that, what's called a Class 1
Class
landfill,
one,
where it's
right.
considered to have some hazardous material.
And I would say to have as little Class 1 as we do, to say that we're in Emeryville, which is really a total brownfield hazardous, area, just based on its history and the things that have been here, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
not
the
to have as much Class
right.
1.
In the original raw scope, I mean, what we had is we didn't have many of the substances that occur on other Emeryville sites,
Right.
more like heavy metals.
Right.
Those tend to be towards the southern and western
Okay.
parts of town.
Okay.
And so we had things that are commonly found at construction sites, but none of the things that you might find elsewhere in the city.
Okay.
But it's a very stringent set of regulations that DTSC has for school sites,
Mhm.
and it looks like we're going to come out ahead of where we thought we would be once we awarded that.
That's great.
Turner's scope of that work.
That's wonderful. Great job.
Any other comments? Well, great work. Before I go to the public, I just wanted to note too that for those who are living in that area where the work is happening, has there been any specific communications, or have there been any concerns raised or questions from members that live, right there?
Yeah, the only incident of that we had was when the first week we started work, a neighbor on 53rd had called the number on this fence for the construction foreman, and was concerned about nesting geese on the field. There were geese on the field. We immediately, within one day, called our biologist out from the environmental consultant, who wrote a report and then filed that report, which went to, I believe, the board also, and that there was no nesting activity from geese or other birds noted on site. And since that time, we've had no other incidents of any, I'm sorry, not biologists, biological issues with plants or animals. Also, there has been, that same firm is on call for any archaeological inspections needed, and to date we've not encountered any of those items either. In terms of neighbors, though, the only neighbor discussion we had was that first day. Also, I will add, we did have one other neighbor inquiry, which is that on about 2 weeks ago, A mechanic had come to prepare some equipment and open the gate. They had reported that some people were running on the field. Within 10 minutes, Turner Construction was contacted. They contacted also Emery PD. They went out there. They were there within 15 minutes of being alerted by the neighbor. There was no one on the site, and they locked the gate. So the response time was really quick. But those are the only 2 times that neighbors have called the district or Turner to note with any issues regarding the work on site.
And I'm assuming now we're being very careful when we leave the site to lock it up and make sure no one can.
Yes, a sternly worded notification to all of Turner's subcontractor and all of their vendors. This is a vendor that was coming. Went out there that they actually must contact Turner to lock and unlock the gate, and they are not to do so by themselves.
Well, and I'll note as a resident not too far away from that site, we've had, it's not necessarily our school site, but that whole area, there's just been so much work. PG&E, East Bay Mud, there's been so much going on. I think we're almost numb to it. So, and the fact that we have a lot of raccoons and possums all over the place. And so, yeah.
You guys still having raccoon problems?
Yeah, we even had a wild turkey at a point. So there's just a lot going on. So I think we're kind of used to it. It's just timely in that this is happening right on the tail of some other project happening. So that's fortunate and not so fortunate for us residents and nearby. But it is what it is. But thanks for providing that information. I was just curious what impact, if any, or questions that's been coming up. At this time, any public comments to this particular item? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Baker, for your update presentation.